Muslim woman harassed by Hindu mob as hijab in classroom row escalates. On February 8th, a video began circulating on Twitter showing a Muslim university student wearing hijab being harassed by a large group of Hindu male students as she walked to enter the college building in Mandya. This viral video was met with swift outrage and brought international attention to the ongoing controversy in the Indian state of Karnataka's state surrounding the recent prohibitions that have barred the wearing of hijab in government operated schools. What began as an incident with 6 female students in Udupi has quickly spread across the state. There have been riots, mass protests, as well as an incident of militants climbing flagpoles to remove India's national flag and replace it with the saffron flag associated with Hindu nationalism. The number of picketings and harassments of Muslim students also went up. Law and order has deteriorated to such an extent that schools and colleges across the state have been ordered to close while the judiciary can come to a decision about the constitutionality of banning the hijab in the classroom.
And before you add some commentary into this, is this a video where she's being like? Let's play this, right? Because this is okay. Hold on, let me play the audio as well because the audio makes it a lot more intense. Okay, this is the one that she comes back and says, "Well, I'm gonna add the audio." That's what I'm saying. This is the one where she like starts saying "Allah Akbar" at the very end, like in response. Is that this one? Is that the one that is getting shared everywhere? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. So for people who don't know, actually, let me see if I can get the larger version of this tweet, right? For people who don't know, Jai Shriram means praise to Ram or long live Ram. I forgot which one it was. Rama,
Glory.
the Hindu, glory to be Ram, right? But what do you think about it? This is pretty. Okay, to be fair, this looks pretty badass. Okay, this video has gone viral. This video has gone viral all over.
Look at just the clip that you've posted or that we're showing has 5.5 million views. And this is only this one. You know, when it gets posted other places, that racks up millions of views too.
No, like Islamic social media is having a field day with this. Like you have an Muslim hijabi woman being surrounded by a whole bunch of Hindu nationalists, and she is defiant. She doesn't seem intimidated. Like she's been surrounded by this like shouting like men who are not like, I mean, it's not okay. Think about the context of just women as a whole being intimidated, rightfully so, by a bunch of men that seem to be like aggressive. Like that's the usual context.
Not even like aggressive, just like a group of men.
Like, okay.
Yeah, any group of men.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a feeling that you get with, you know, that's a reasonable feeling that a lot of women have. Okay, but on top of all that, add the context in which she's a Muslim and these are Hindu nationalists, right? So it's beyond that. It's beyond just that these are a group of men and she's just a woman. We have a rising stats. Actually, you shared me just earlier of religious violence, especially on, Hindus and Muslims, right, in India, right? So it's not just that she's a woman and these are a bunch of men. She's a Muslim and these are Hindu nationalists. That makes it extremely much scarier, right? I mean, even if you're a Muslim man and these are a bunch of Hindu nationalists, that's already scary, okay? But she doesn't seem like she is at all intimidated. And not only that, she shouts back, okay? And this is the most alpha Allah Akbar like no I've ever heard in my entire life, right? Like no ISIS or Al Qaeda or like all those Allah Akbars have always been cringe, okay? Every Allah Akbar by the Islamic Republic of it. This is the first time in my life that I'm like, oh my God, this girl, oh, wow. Right? This Allah Akbar. You know how like a lot of people want to say like, oh, Allah Akbar is like intimidating and like is supposed to put fear into the hearts of the enemy or something like that. She actually managed to pull off something that I've never seen anybody to pull. Because for me, Allah Akbar is cringe. Always been cringe. Okay, this is the first time I feel like, yeah, Allah Akbar. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's right.
Oh my God! All the Hindu nationalists on your ass are gonna be like,
I know.
Oh, the mask slips. It was Takia all along. He couldn't help the sympathies in his Muslim blood.
Okay, so first of all, let me just be clear, okay? This is just what I'm talking about, what this looks like, okay? Because, okay, we're anti-modesty culture, we're anti-hijab, we're anti-Islam, and we're anti-Allah Akbar, okay? But you have to be fair that this looks pretty badass, okay? Like, if you want to, like, sell Islam, okay, or sell... I don't know if you want to. I've never seen any video more in favor of the Islamic point of view than this. Like, not everything I've seen is like, okay, that was pretty good. Good. I mean, you guys are still like, this is all still wrong. But this is why this video is going viral. Like, this woman has been turned into a hero. This is the first time for a while that I've seen that Muslims have been united over something or celebrating this. Like, it does not really matter what side of anything you are. Like, Muslims agree that this is based, right? And this video has become such a symbol of fighting the oppressors. By the way, congratulations, Hindu nationalists. You're so cringe that you're making Islam actually like this is what you do, right? When you oppress people, you're helping them, you're giving them the propaganda that they need, right? So you're making the world sympathize with hijab now, okay? Like, this is what you're doing. Like, the people in the secularists in India who want to fight for Muslim rights but also don't want to encourage modesty culture like hijab, they have to now work overtime because they want to be like, yes, we support this woman, but also hijab is cringe. But right now it's like really hard for them to survive because you're either at, like, you know what I mean? Like, because people who are against the Hindu nationalists, they want to completely celebrate anything that this woman stands for, including her hijab. And that's kind of like, so yeah, but this is what you do. This is when you are on the side of the oppressors or a side of you make even bad ideas look good. But okay, regardless of this hijab, this woman is pretty brave. Okay, you have to agree. This woman is really like, can we? I know I already showed this. Can we watch the part where she just goes like, you know, Muslims are calling her like a lot of Muslims are calling her a lioness and everything like that, and I think that's pretty fair. Okay, like, she comes off as so strong when she like shouts about Allah Akbar. Just one more time, okay? Okay, hold on.
Oh my God!
I have to. This is pretty good. Yeah, this is like my mask off Taqiyya moment. Maybe I'm relating with this too much, which shows like maybe like in my heart, I've never like the Hindus were always right. I've never left Islam. Okay, this confirms everything they've been saying. Mustafa saying the truth, the most inspiring Allah Akbar I've ever heard, and I'm an ex-Muslim. See, it's not just me. It's not just me. Other people who are like anti-Islam, they're also saying like, you know what? And yeah, okay. Look at how all of them are surrounding her. Like, she's one person. Look at her. Look. she sounds like she's like so fed up with their bullshit. You know, that's what she sounds like. She's like, she's like, like the way she goes, like, I'm done with this. Yeah. By the way, she's a student. She's a schoolgirl. That's her school bag. This picture right here, this sign with all those men in the background and her having her arms up. This has become the picture that everybody is taking and turning this to a symbol of resistance, okay, against oppression, right? This right here, this still image. Oh, look at this. It's a perfect image. All of them in the background and her shouting and having her fist up in the air. Like, it couldn't have been more perfect. And the camera came right in front of her with all this background at exactly the right moment that it needed for her to be like, shout Allah Akbar and raise her fist. It's like it couldn't even have been designed more perfectly than this, okay? This is why you are seeing this everywhere. Like, as long as you're following anything Islam related, this is why this is blowing up.
Or anything
not
India related.
blowing up, not in an Allah Akbar kind of way, but like actually, yeah, whatever. But yeah,
Okay, well, I want to actually dig into like the meat of this.
Okay, sorry. I have to hear her yell like Allah Akbar one more time. Hold on. What? Like, oh my God, this is okay. Hey, go on. You go on.
So, okay. Now that Armin has had his fangirl moment, I want to actually dig into the meat of this news. So, I think we covered the kind of initial beginnings of the story when it first happened in the government run girls' college in Udupi. And since then, it has blown up across not only the state, but also India as a whole, and obviously catching a lot of international attention. So I think it's really interesting how much of a mess this story has become. There are so many different aspects to dig into here. And unfortunately, a lot of this news has become defense or whitewashing of the hijab itself. So a lot of people, in their effort to run to the defense of the 6 girls at the girls' college or this girl at the engineering college, they make a lot of excuses for the practice of the hijab itself, and this isn't something that we support. And so there was like a quote from the print saying, "It's distressing that this hijab saffron scarf robe in Karnataka is forcing even the well-meaning voices of modernity and liberalism to defend the regressive practice of covering up young women." So when we talk about this news, we need to really pull apart the issues that we are discussing here. So when we talk about this news, we are not here to talk about, well, is hijab, is it or is not like obligatory in Islam? That's not what we're here to talk about. Armin and I both have the understanding that it is obligatory for women. We're not here to defend the hijab as a practice, because it's something that we completely oppose. We criticize it constantly because we do think that it is a symbol of the ownership of women. In general, it is modesty culture, which is rape culture, right? Again, these are things that we oppose. So the issue at hand here is really the implementation of India's kind of secularism in this case, and is then revoking the ability for these girls to wear the hijab in the classroom in government-run institutions now. Is this a violation of their constitutional rights? Is this denying them the right to education? And all kind of the issues surrounding that. So that's what I really want to talk about. We're not here to talk about the hijab itself, because we have already talked about this many times. Like I said, this is something we oppose, and we won't defend it. There's a difference between defending that girl from a mob in defending her practice of clothing, right? So, like, I sympathize towards defending her as a person from an extremely aggressive mob. I'm not going to defend what that piece of clothing represents or the religious origins that it comes from, right? So when I was preparing for this news, I was watching a lot of content from Indian commentators and from Indian lawyers. And my understanding is that denying the girls the right to wear the hijab in the classroom is unconstitutional, based on what these lawyers have been interpreting and telling me. So, it's unconstitutional on the basis of Article 14 and Article 25 of the Indian Constitution, which is ostensibly the right to equality and equal protection under the law, as well as the right to profess and practice religion. What makes it complicated is that there have been various other rulings. There was a ruling in the state of Kerala that has some precedents related to this, and there were other major rulings that have to do with having the hijab in the classroom. So there have been rulings that, like, a private Christian school can ban the hijab in their classroom because they are a private religious institution. This is a public government-run school. Okay, so these have to be treated very differently. There have been other issues, and I'm not a lawyer, and these things are complicated. So please forgive me because I know I'm not going to be able to give the totality of the background to this, but there have been precedents with other rulings that say that there can be restrictions on these rights when it has any conflict with, like, public order. And there was another ruling specifically having to do with the realm of education, where there can be restrictions on clothing in relation to disrupting equality in the school setting. Now, there's been a lot of different ways that people are trying to interpret this. Well, there's been people who've been saying, oh, well, this is inherently an unequal form of clothing based on what this means. But the way that I was hearing from the lawyers about what this equality ruling means in the context of the classroom is not about, like, whether or not this practice of wearing this type of clothing is oppressive or not, but and more about equality amongst students to equally profess their faith in the classroom. So if there's, like, a disruption to that, then it's not okay. And many of the lawyers have been talking about a lot of this will not stand, or in a perfect world, it won't stand. There's still a lot that is, like, evolving about this because of the arbitrary nature of this. So these girls have been going to school in these colleges for years wearing the hijab. And suddenly, just like a state order comes down and they're just not allowed to do this anymore. Oftentimes just without notice, they're getting barred from their classrooms. And when they're barred from their classrooms for what they wear and what they believe to be their constitutional right, they are being denied the right to education. This is part of their argument. And when we talked about this last time, we didn't have a firm opinion on this yet, because we're like, well, these girls are, according to the information we had at that time, well, they are violating their uniform code, and just because they're a religious minority.
We didn't know if the school was public. Okay, so we didn't have all the information. We were wondering if the school is public or private, and we were wondering if this is, like, being focused on hijab, or all forms of religious covering. So that we didn't have, we weren't sure if, like, Muslims were specifically being targeted, or was it everybody? So we needed that information. So we rightfully didn't. We said it depends at that time.
So, yes, this is a government-run school, and so according to reports that I've been reading, these girls have been wearing it for a long time, and all of a sudden, this order came down that they just can't wear it anymore, and that they're being barred from the classroom. All the stuff that I said before. So
That's ridiculous.
a lot of people are raising the red flag because they're saying this has been implemented completely arbitrarily. I have seen things on Twitter from journalists. I can't completely validate the legitimacy of it, but it was a copy of a uniform code that said that students are allowed to wear the headscarf as long as the color corresponds to the color of the school's uniform, so that there is conformity within from the headscarf to the uniform, right? Because this is very common
In
for
this
Sikh
school as
students.
well? Or
I believe it was for this school.
Wait,
But
so
like I
these
said,
girls, so these girls can put on the hijab as long as it's not black? Are they allowed to do that?
it's supposed to correspond to their what any given school's
Okay,
uniform
so
color
wait,
is.
so
But wait,
wait,
let me say, like, there wasn't really an easy way for me to verify that this was the uniform of code of that actual school, right? They could have pulled that from a different school. So I'm just trying to like give the whole story. But it's very common in India that like a Sikh student, they are allowed to wear the turban, and that's like a non-negotiable. But they do have to have the color of
right.
their turban the same as their school's uniform. So there
Okay,
is
but
precedence for this and other examples of this type of thing.
But I don't think the school allows them to wear any hijab. That's my understanding. Unless that's unless I'm wrong about this, I'm not sure. Like, yeah. By the way, I don't think India they would ever dare tell Sikhs not to put their turban on, right? I
No.
think like that. Okay, so this is like completely double standard, right? If a Sikh is not required to remove their turban, why would Muslims require to take off their hijab? If it doesn't apply to the Sikhs, why would it apply to the Muslims?
Well,
Right?
what's becoming interesting is so the court put down an injunction that just like schools were announced on Tuesday, like this last Tuesday, like schools were just closed for 3 days. And then there was a ruling that was supposed to come down today, and it seems like until they come up with a firm ruling, their interim decision is that no religious symbols are allowed. So you're not allowed to wear the saffron shawls, you're not allowed to wear the hijab. I can't remember off the top of my head if they're still making I to be honest, I don't know if they're still making an exception for Sikhs. I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah,
they
well,
weren't.
Rudresh is saying you don't piss off Sikhs, Armin, and they are an exception to the rule. I mean, that's what you're training people, that the best way to make sure you're fueling radical movements, or you're fueling intimidation tactics, right? So basically, the signal to Muslim community is that make sure you're radical enough that we don't dare do it. Instead of actually trying to be fair to people, you're pushing them in the corner until they get the same kind of status, right? And then you're like wondering why we have radicalism.
So there's a few things more things that I want to get into. So a lot of, and when we talked about this last time, like we didn't have as much information as we had now, but we were comparing this to the situation in France and the rulings in France that they have about not allowing the hijab in the schools. And we were like, well, how we support it, but in this I'm not sure, because there's so many things up in the air. And it's also partially influenced by the sharp rise in hate crimes that have been happening in Karnataka recently, as well as the elections that are happening in Uttar Pradesh right now. Although it's a different state, having this sort of political action really escalating in another state that's controlled by the BJP, a lot of political analysts are saying is kind of a way of trying to influence the upcoming UP elections, which I think actually just began, but are like the most influential of the country, one of the most influential of the country. So this is very important. And I was talking to a friend, and she was saying the comparisons to France are really misguided because it's a completely different situation. In France, their laïcité is top down, like very consistent. Like there's no religious symbols from government ministers all the way down to the schools. It's all the way, well, pretty much like all the way through. But here, like you have Yogi Adityanath, like the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, who wears his saffron robes 24/7. Like Modi was just publicly worshiping in saffron, just a few days ago.
Right.
So they're
Right.
saying
That's actually that's a very good point. We would be very much against the hijab ban in schools in France if, for example, Macron was like openly promoting Christianity and including Christian symbolism in his government, and he was like participating in Christian propaganda and constantly like praying while being on duty and everything, and having a cross on everything, all his ceremonies and everything. There was crosses and Jesus related stuff everywhere. And then if then he had like a hijab ban, we're like, no, this is not secularism. This is like one religion versus another. That's what this is about. But yeah, go on. That's a very good point.
And also, I think so it's the way that secularism is interpreted in these two countries is very different, and so it's not an equal comparison where you can just say, oh, I hold this standard here, so I'm going to hold it here, because what's happening on the ground and the consequences of these two decisions are both very different in practice. And you in particular, Armin, are very influenced by consequentialism, right? I think another thing that influences me in terms of how I feel about this issue is partially a problem of consequences. So in France, like, they don't allow homeschooling. They have a registry of children where they make sure that you're not getting homeschooled, that you're going to school. Like, they're very thorough in tracking down children and making sure that they are getting educated. But what's happening in India is that there's the high potential that if this isn't allowed, girls will just straight up be removed from school and they won't get an education. There's already a huge problem in the country where I just learned about this week, where millions, like something like 73 million girls drop out of school just because they get their periods, right?
Yeah. And the lack of education is going to fuel fundamentalism.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of people who are not defending the hijab, but defending these girls in the classroom are saying this should be allowed, because if your rhetoric is all about empowering these girls against an oppressive form of clothing and denying them the right to education for the sake of this piece of clothing, you're actually disempowering their ability to remove that piece of clothing later in life when they are on their own and can make that decision away from other people, like mainly their family, who may be influencing them to wear this. You know,
I mean, so, even if they keep their hijab, like, just be a more contributing part of society and feel as part of India. And I mean, like, and there are other ways other than just taking off the hijab where somebody could be less influenced by conservatism, you know what I mean? Like, that's one of it, but there's many other things, right? And I think by removing them from the public sphere, or especially access to education, you're basically acting like you're fighting against Islam, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna fuel the worst kinds of it, right? The worst reflection of Islam by doing something like that. Yeah.
And exactly, a lot of people are saying the government has had a huge push to try to get Muslim parents to not send their children to madrasas, which I fully support. Send your kids to the state school. Please don't send them to like religious schools. But they're saying that you are shooting yourself in the foot of your own effort to promote that kind of education when you're doing this, right? So it's not purely about just the principles of what this is. We're also talking about what's happening consequentially to generations of Indian students, particularly young women. What's also interesting to consider is that a lot of the people who are making a super hard push against the hijab right now are these right-wing nationalists. And they're saying, oh, well, this is oppressing women, blah, blah, blah. Okay. These are the same types who will assault women in the street for wearing jeans, Western clothing, assault couples on Valentine's Day because, you know, they're not married and they're not being traditional. Like, these people are not genuine feminists. Like, they are the ones who promote love jihad laws, which inhibit a woman's right to choose her own partner. Right? This is an essential part of feminism. Like, these people are not genuine feminists. They are not genuinely concerned about the oppression that these women experience. If any, they are concerned about the hijab because it is one of the most public declarations of Muslim identity that there is.
Right.
And that's insulting to them.
It's so funny when they act like this is about, you know, feminism when they're anti-hijab, or even Richard is even more hypocritical that it's about secularism, right? The same people who are the most anti-secularists in India. Now all of a sudden are like, oh, this is about secularism. No, oh my, yeah. But let's do some of the. Okay, did you want to add anything? Because there are some juicy comments that that we started.
I think yeah, 1 second. One thing that I think about is I don't think that, let me just make it clear one more time. In an ideal world, I would not support the hijab in the classroom if we had a consistent legal standard for this kind of thing, or that the consequences wouldn't be dire to women's education. Because even if we did have a consistent standard, but it was coming at the detriment of young girls getting educated, I would actually change my mind and advocate for allowing it, because I think that that's more important to me. That has a higher utility than just like a principle of it, right? In I think so. Where I've come down to this on this topic so far is that I think that these girls should be allowed to wear it in the classroom. But like I said, in a perfect world, I wouldn't allow it. But based on my understanding of the standards that have been presented to me, I think that what's being applied to them is arbitrary, and that it's not about secularism, that it's about showing Muslims their place. Which is interesting because the BJP, a lot of people in the BJP are have a big push for making a uniform civil code in India. For those who are not aware, in India, there are many different types of personal laws. These personal laws apply to you on the basis of your religion that you were born into or that you convert to. Like different laws for inheritance for Muslims, there are different things for Parsis, different things for Jews, different things for Hindus. And that's why we have all these like special marriage acts to allow these things to cross over and integrate. It's extremely confusing. It's extremely confusing.
Susanna, we're like
no, I know.
36 minutes into
I know.
This,
so there's a push for making one law for all, which I support. What I think is interesting is that some of the biggest supporters of this are the BJP, which I'm like, why is that? I think the motivations are very different. So I think this kind of ties into this push for a uniform civil code. That's more complicated and a topic for a different day.
All right,
so you want to,
given that I have a meeting after this, we have to keep the other news a lot more shorter because we commented on this a lot. But yeah, so let me just, I do need to highlight the other some comments. Ted is saying hijab should be banned all over the non-Muslim world. Well, no, Ted, you could go, well, I don't want to swear. So we don't, we're not in support of fascists and tyrants here, okay? You don't get to control what women wear, okay? We are against the hijab, but if we want to fight modesty culture, we do it by activism and trying to convince people why something is bad. If you want to ban something from up down instead of actually trying to convince people why an idea is bad, then you're a fascist and your ideas are as dangerous, or sometimes even more dangerous than the religious one you seem to be pretending to be hating, okay? So yeah, get your fascism out of here. So we don't like that. Rudresh is saying they were literally making religious arguments in court on whether it's an essential practice. Yeah, that's so ridiculous. Like, this is what India has come into. Like, instead of arguing about the people's rights and secularism, the arguments in defense of the ridiculous part is that the Islamic lawyers and stuff that are trying to defend the girl, they were like, oh, this is required by Islam. Who gives a oh my god, I'm really trying not to swear.
They literally they were bringing up Quran verses in court. It's terrible.
Your country, no, Susanna, you already said so much. Okay, so let me just go through this really fast. Your country is like, legal system has turned into a joke if you're bringing up scripture for making, like, you're like, India is supposed to become like tomorrow's superpower. You know, you're making a clown out of yourself. You're becoming an embarrassment to your country. This is ridiculous. You should be embarrassed if your lawyers, the people who are supposed to come argue for law, are bringing scripture in court. Like, how embarrassing this is for India. This is okay. Somebody else is saying she can't shout back because India is secular. Yeah, and we hope it remains secular. Okay, so India secularism is under attack by both Muslims and Hindus, right? So here's another set. Well, not all. Okay. Satish saying, if you face them to take off the hijab, I will be pro hijab. If you force them to take off the hijab, I will be pro hijab. If you force them to wear it, I will be anti hijab. It's not a problem. Your imposition is. No, I completely disagree with that. There's a difference between supporting the right to wear a hijab and supporting the hijab. I will never support the hijab. I will support someone's freedom to wear the hijab, but I will never be pro hijab. Pro hijab is modesty culture. If you're pro hijab, you're supporting modesty culture, and if you're supporting modesty culture, you're supporting rape culture. Hijab should never be supported. You could support someone's right to wear the hijab, but not the hijab itself and what it represents.
It's about being against state compulsion.
Exactly. Hindutva Susanna is saying all you need is optics to play a victim card and propaganda. Remember these Muslims. Oh my God, these Muslims. Hindutva Susanna, can you please learn how to refer to? Okay, these Muslims are the ones who demanded burqa in secular institutions. Actually, here's the thing. I noticed Hindutva Susanna did something wrong, and I'm gonna use this as a way to criticize myself. Okay, because we just said these are the same people who make arguments that are anti-secular. So I just noticed Hindutva Susanna's collective attitude, and I noticed that I did that myself as well. Okay, because when I say these are the same people, well, we don't know, not all of them, right? There are some people who are Hindus who are like, might even be Hindutva, who are consistent and they are arguing from a position of secularism, right? So we shouldn't collectively, like, these are not the same people. You don't know if they're the same people. Just because they're Muslim, you can't be referring to them, all of them, as if they're just one entity. Okay, this is not all, they're not all, every single Muslim is not incomplete, it's not completely the same as all other Muslims. Okay, there are Muslims who might not have this line of argument. So I don't know why you're collectively talking about them as if they're the same. I'm criticizing you, Hindutva Susanna, while noticing that I just did the same thing just a few minutes ago. So I'm criticizing both of us right now. Okay, both you and me were wrong to talk like this. Oh, this person was really triggered. Rags Boy was saying, stop trying to glorify the stupid Islamic BI. Okay, so swearing at her. I love this because it shows how triggered they are. They know, like the Hindutva supporters, they know how good this looks. They know how much this video makes them look like they're the baddies, and the Muslim side is the victims. They're so triggered by this video, and they're like going out and like trying to do damage control, and they're getting hurt over they're getting butthurt over anybody who's acknowledging that, right? This one.
Am I the baddie right now?
Am I the baddies? Are we the baddies? Okay, look at this. This is another form of collectivism, I think. Like, again, I say that's why I know I was guilty of it myself. So these Hindus are trying to be anti-Muslim, but it backfired. LMAO. Okay, I don't know. Okay, so I don't know if okay, I think it's fine, because I don't know if you're saying these Hindus as in specifically these Hindus, or like all Hindus. Okay, so I'm just gonna be charitable. I don't know. Okay, I think I'm being very picky, but yes, it did backfire. They were like those specific people over there. They were being. It seemed like they were like acting like they were trying to defend their position, but it looks really ridiculous right now. And I think this is another form of butthurt. I can be sure. Hindutva Susanna is saying, all I see is a Hindu consolidation. Can't wait to see another term for Modi and Yogi. See, this is like the damage control. People are like, no, we don't look bad, you look bad, we're gonna win, we're winning. So like, this is like, I think this is like everybody, like, I think a lot of Hindus, again, I'm trying to not to use general language here, okay, a lot of Hindus are like, see how bad this looks, and they're trying to overcompensate by saying like, at least we're winning the election and we're gonna get our revenge. I think like, I think they know how bad this looks, so they're trying to overcompensate. But yeah, anyways, anything else you want to add? Let me see. While I was talking, thank you guys.
No, it bothers me how I've seen from a lot of ex-Muslims, they use images from women protesting the hijab in Iran to like show the contrast of like, oh, Muslims in India are getting radicalized because they're fighting for the hijab, but look at all these millions of women who are trying to fight for the right to remove it, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's kind of misled, because in both of those cases, it's people protesting against compulsion, right? And so they're missing the mark. And also, I feel like it's a lot of, I've seen many women talking about this in India saying, I'm going to go wear the hijab now. I haven't before because F you, like in defiance, right? So I think, and it also actually, these kinds of things are going to push people towards being more firm in their minority Muslim identity, because they're facing the persecution. And this is what happens when people get persecuted. You double down on your in-group identity. So it's just a mess all around. If there was a genuine interest towards preventing like radicalism in India, things would be handled very differently. You're muted.
I said just read this and we could go to the next news.
Anonymous is saying those saffron lions are so brave running after and harassing a lone girl. Yeah. So freaking lame when men all of a sudden turn into super brave when they're like running 30 deep. Oh, you're so brave. Atheist Republic needs your help. We've been the target of many legal attacks by Hindu nationalists ever since our founder, Armin Navabi, blasphemed against Hindu deities. We have retained legal counsel to help us defend our access to our community in India. We have started a fundraiser that will help us afford to tackle many legal issues, including judicial harassment and censorship. Whatever you can contribute will go a long ways in helping us in this fight. Link in the description below.